Today, we're going to talk about probably the most basic thing that anybody would ever use on their Mac, which is the dock. And it's so unappreciated, and it's such a powerful tool. And a lot of people spend a lot of money buying third-party utilities that help them to shortcut and build shortcuts and make things go easier for them. If only they knew that it's built into the Mac, they probably wouldn't really have to go there. So what we're going to do today is show you two components, the basic settings and how to manage the dock, and then how to customize it to make it work for you. So I'm going to kick straight in. Okay, so here's a traditional layout of the dock. You've got the dock at the bottom of the screen, and the dock is divided in Catalina, at the very least, into three segments. In Mojave, there's only two. In Catalina, it's three segments. You have this tiny little divider over here, which separates the three segments. Everything to the left is an application. These three items in the middle are your recently used applications, and everything to the right is a customizable area, which by default has the downloads folder loaded. And this customizable area is where the interesting stuff happens. So let's have a look at some of the settings. There's a couple of ways we can get to the settings. We can either go to our system preferences and click on the dock settings. We can also right-click on any of these dividers. Do you see how the cursor changes into a double-headed arrow? If we right-click on there, we can open up the preferences from there, and it opens up our system preferences and goes straight to the dock. So we can adjust the size, make it really tiny, really large. It gets to a certain point that when it hits the edges of the screen, it can't get any larger. So if you've only got a few icons in there, you can make your icons pretty large. But as you can see, around about the middle is where my maximum size, and from this point on, nothing will get any larger. We can turn magnification on and off, and this allows us to magnify the icons as we move our cursor over it. I don't particularly like it because it moves the icon slightly on the screen, and I like my stuff to be where I've left it and not jiggle around underneath me. So there is a keyboard shortcut. If I need to turn on magnification, if I hold the Command key and the Shift key down, it turns on magnification, sorry, Control key and Shift key. It turns magnification on temporarily. And if I take my finger off there, we're back to default. So Control Shift turns on magnification. And then when you take your fingers off those keys, it goes back to normal behavior. So that's your first tip. Leave magnification on, off, hold Control and Shift key down. The other thing that you can do is you can choose the position of your dock on the screen. You can choose the left side of your screen. It's gone right off onto my second monitor. The right side of the screen, I don't know if you guys can see it. My personal preference is to have it on the right-hand side of the screen. And there has to be a reason for it. I mean, you could do it for just aesthetically, but my screens are always wider than they are tall, but most of the documents I work with are taller than they are wide. So I like to move my dock to the right-hand side. The vertical real estate on my screen is typically the most important to me. And it takes a little while to get used to it, but personally, I prefer to have my dock, excuse me, on the right-hand side of the screen. Minimizing windows. This is a fun little thing. This is really an aesthetic thing. If I have a window on the screen and I minimize it, the default is your genie effect. I can change that to your scale effect, where it really just shrinks down and shrinks back up. It might even be going too fast for you guys to see that through Zoom. I'm going to leave it at the default genie effect. I'm going to leave this one here, prefer tabs when opening documents, because really this is a window thing and it's not really relevant, and we're short for time at the moment. So I'm going to move on to the next setting. Double clicking a Windows title bar. This is quite an interesting one, because if my window is, say, small like that one, and I choose to zoom it, if I double click on the title bar there, it makes the window open up to the fullest size needed to be for me to see the content. If I double click it again, it takes it back to its original size. But the default is to actually minimize the window. And if we minimize the window, it goes down into, by default, to the right-hand side of my dock. So I can keep my screen nice and clean, but minimize my items to the dock. Now, this one's interesting. I'm not going to show it to you now. We're going to deal with it slightly more as we get further on. But one of the choices we've got is to minimize the windows not into the dock, but into the icon that, just want to move this out my way, into the icon that owns it. So if I am minimizing a Pages document, it'll minimize into this icon. Oh, let's just show it once. If I click here and minimize windows to the application icon, instead of going down to the right-hand side of the dock, it goes into the Pages icon. And we'll come back and have a look at why that's important. Animate opening applications. If I click on an application to open it, you'll see over here, it bounces a couple of times. In this case, it's such a small application. It only took one bounce, but if you've got a really large application like Photoshop, it might bounce 6 or 7 times. We've all got SSD hard drives now, or some of us, a lot of us, hopefully have got SSD drives, and they launch pretty quickly. Let's quit that guy. Automatically hide and show the dock. If you've got a tiny screen, if you're working with a laptop only, you might want to have the full screen. So you automatically hide the dock, and then when you take your cursor to the bottom of the screen, it appears. When you move your cursor back up, it disappears. Again, a preference that you can choose. Let's leave it on for the course of the session. Showing indicators for open applications. You see the little black dot at the bottom of some of these applications? This indicates that the applications are actually running. And sometimes people close windows, but they don't quit the application, and they find at the end of the day, they've actually got 50 applications running, and they're wondering why they're running out of memory, but they've closed all the windows and they don't think they've got any apps running. This little dot is just an indicator to say this app is running and it's in memory. If I switch it off, you'll see the black dots disappear. And finally, as I said, this area over here show the recent applications in the dock. Those of you who came to the Mac from iPad, you'll recognize that in iPad OS. Personally, I don't find it that useful. I prefer having the screen real estate, so I tend to switch it off. But this will show you the last 3 apps that you used and that you opened. So I'm going to switch that off, and now I've got a little bit more screen real estate. Something I want to show you as well, remember how we resized the dock? If I click and drag from that divider, I can also resize from there. So you can see now my icons are slightly larger because I have a little bit more screen real estate. So that is in a nutshell are your preferences. Let's have a look now. Oh, there's one more. Do you see how this one popped up? This is the handoff. I'm reading my notes on my iPad at the moment, and it's just recognized that I've done some work on my iPad, and it's saying, do you want to carry on using that application in your Mac? If so, click here, and it'll take me to Pages, and it'll open up the document that I'm looking at on my iPad. Let's get rid of these guys and have a look a bit more at the dock. So we have the left-hand side of the dock, as I said, which is dedicated to applications. And we've got the right-hand side of the dock, which is dedicated to customization. Each icon has 2 different states. They behave differently when the application is running or when the application is not running. And you're going to see quite a lot of stuff within the next minute or 2 about how that works. So how do we get icons into the dock? Well, the first thing is if an application is running, it automatically appears in the dock if it wasn't there before. So let's go to applications, and I'm going to take an application that's not inside there. Let's take one that launches quickly. Let's take Fontbook. And if you have a look here, just by this little divider, when I launch Fontbook, it opens up, there's my fonts. And when I quit Fontbook, it disappears. So there's a couple of ways that I can get it into and stay in my dock. The first way is to drag it in there. So if I drag it in here, it now appears and stays in my dock. And if I click to launch it, it launches. When I quit it, it stays there. If I want to take it out of the dock, I just simply drag it. You see it says remove, and now it's removed from the dock. Next time I launch it, it'll come back there, but because I haven't put it in there, it will disappear. What if I don't want to go through the schlep of actually dragging it in and then saying, finding the application and dragging it in there? If I double click on the app, if we click on that app and we right click on it and we have a look at the options, there are 3 additional options. One is to keep it in the dock. So if I choose keep in the dock and go back to it, you'll see keep in the dock is ticked. So now if I quit, it stays in the dock. If I go back there and say remove from the dock, I can get rid of it as well. So that's one of 2 ways that we can actually get it into the dock. Let's have a look at what else that shows us. Let's take Safari, for example. Safari is quit at the moment. You can see it doesn't have the black dot at the bottom. I can remove it from the dock. I can set this to open at login so that when I start up my Mac, this program will always run, irrespective of what. So if I always open up my Mac and check my email, I can say open at login, and then next time I restart my machine, Safari in this case would launch. But I could make it Mail, I could make it Word, I could make whatever application I wanted to appear there. I'm going to remove that, and I'm just going to close this window down. And I'm going to do the final one that's in that pop-up menu, and I'm going to say show in Finder. If I want to find that application inside my hard drive, I choose show in Finder, and there it is. It's opened up the applications window and it's shown me where that one is. So that's what the dock looks like when an application is closed. Let's have a look at Mail as well. You can see there's no dock down there. If I click and hold it, exactly the same things. I can open the app if I don't like clicking on it. I'm going to skip show recents for the moment. You've seen these 3 already, but that's all that this one's got. So let's launch the app. So there's my Mail. I'm just going to close that guy down there. And look what happens when I click on it again. I have a bunch of new choices. Firstly, it shows me all the windows that are open. In this case, I've just got my message viewer window. If I want to get new mail, I can make a new viewer window, or I can compose a new message. Now, you go, well, why on earth would I want to do that? Because I've got the little button up top here, which says make a new message. But look what happens when I've got another application sitting in front of it. What if I'm in the middle of doing something and I go, oh, I want to make a new mail. Mail is open. Let's click on this, compose new message, and it opens up a new message window that I can click and send without actually switching to Mail. Okay, so a very nice way of accessing the main, well, you either get mail and read it, or you want to send a mail. This is a nice, quick way of sending your mail. Let's hide this guy. Can you see how busy this is getting on the side? Getting messy. So let's minimize this as well. If I right-click on the Finder or hold and click on the Finder, I can do a bunch of things. I can make a new Finder window. Those of you who attended the Spotlight search will remember the Smart folder, and we're going to cover that again. I can do a find. If I don't remember where the find command is in the Finder, I can just select find. And there's my find a find window that we spent a lot of time with Spotlight. It also shows me the last 10 Finder windows that I had open. So if I click on my Go menu here and you see recent folders, you can see my home folder, applications, saved searches, May 28th. If I click and hold here, same ones. So if I was to open this, it opens up folder for me. So if I can't remember where the folder was that I opened recently, all I have to do is click and hold on the Finder, and there I go. Useful? I like it. So what else can we do? We can drag and drop icons onto here. So let's say I've got, let me open this window here. Let's say I want to send this Photoshop file to somebody in Mail. Right? I could open up my Mail, I could make a new window, I could start typing, and then I could come back and I could insert this document here, or I could just take the document, drag it onto Mail, and it can't be found. Why can't it be found? Let's take another one. There we go. It's opened up a new Mail message and it's created an attachment. So typically what would have taken 3 steps is now done in 1, and you have your compose window here where you can actually just start to send your file. So I find this very, very useful. The other thing that the dock lets you do is it lets you open up documents from another program in another program. What do I mean by that? It lets me say, for example, I've got a Word document, but I don't want to open it up in Word. I want to open it up in Pages. So let's do a quick find for documents that are Word docs. Okay, 4 fun things to do with the Mac. So here's a Microsoft Word document. If I double click it, it's going to open up Word. But if I drag it onto the dock, any application that understands it will highlight. So I could send it as an attachment to mail. I could send it as a message. Let's go to Pages. I can open it up in Pages, and it's opening up on the second screen here. I'll just drag it across. 4 fun things to do with your Mac. So you can force documents to open up in specific applications, assuming the application supports that document. And lastly, and this is a bit of a fun thing, and they keep changing this, so this will work, but there's one of my favorite things that they took away was you could select some text and drag it into Safari and would automatically do a Google search on that. So that's gone, but what we do have is if I say I've got my dictionary in the dock. So there's my dictionary down there. If I've got a word, let's say accessibility, if I take that word and I drag it over, oh, it's gone because it's not permanently in the dock. Let's just keep this there. Keep in the dock. Let's drag this down into dictionary, and it opens up the dictionary, and there's no, it's taken the bullet point. So not the best demo, but if you've got a word that's highlighted and you drag it in there, it opens up the dictionary to the word that you're looking for. I know there's keyboard shortcuts and right-clicking that'll open it up inside the app, but this is still a legacy of earlier systems. So really, that's the left-hand side of the dock. You can customize it, you can move things around. If you don't want this here, you can push it to the right-hand side. You can just move these guys around. You can rearrange this any way that you want to. And the other thing that it does is if I've got an open application and I look at my Pages document, here are the 10 most recent documents I've opened. These are all the documents I have opened, and the ones with the little star next to them are actually hidden and minimized. So if I choose that one, it opens up on my screen. So that's the right-hand side of the dock, the left-hand side of the dock. Let me just go here now, and I want to go to my dock preferences, and I want these icons not to be in the right-hand side of the dock. I want them to minimize into the applications. So let me just open them all up quickly. And I'm going to minimize those there, minimize those there. And what we've got here, minimize my mail and minimize Safari. And you'll see they all go down into the applications that own them. Keynote's going into Keynote. Let's just minimize all of you guys. So now I've got a clean screen. I've got these applications with minimized windows, and I've got a nice clean dock on the right-hand side that I can start to customize. So as I said before, the right-hand side of the dock is your customizable area. And by default, you get the downloads folder. If I click on it, this will show me all my downloads. Now, there are 3 different views we can have for a folder inside the dock. And if I right-click on it, you can see that there's a fan, a grid, or a list. Now, the rule for this is typically if there are more than 7 items or less than 7 items inside a folder, it'll show it as a fan, and it looks like this. I'll click on here, you'll see this little fan that goes out. If I want to see the whole folder, you see I've got 340 items in my Finder. In my downloads folder, it's time I did a little bit of housekeeping. I want to see it in the folder, it opens up the folder for me. But it makes sense that if you're clicking on it and there's more than 7 or 8 items, that you'll actually want to see it as a grid. So let's go back and set it to grid. And now I've got all my items in my grid. If I start typing the first few letters, so let's type, I don't know if I've got anything with a V in it, type V, and there we go, virtual desktop JPEG. I've got folders. If I open this folder, Mojave Materials, I can go into my folders, I can go back out my folders, I can take stuff, I can drag them out, I can copy them somewhere else. If I hit the escape key, it just cancels out what I'm doing. So that's one of the things that I can do with this. That's my views. We'll look at the list view in a second. But let's say, for example, I want to have quick access to my applications folder. Well, let's go to my computer at the top level, open up my hard drive, and there's my applications. So let's drag that into the right-hand side of the dock. Stuff moves aside. I'll just close this guy up again. If I click on it, there's all of my applications. And if I wanted to run Microsoft, type M, that's Mac Tracker, MIC, there's Microsoft Excel, Microsoft Note, Microsoft Outlook. I can click on them and run them, I'm good to go. What else can I do? You can see over here that it's showing me the icons. If I right click on it, you can see that they're sorted by name. So this is 1Password, it's got the number 1 on it. If I click on it, you'll see 1, A, B, C, they're all sorted alphabetically. If I wanted to sort them, for example, by date modified, you'll see that the whole order changes. And I can do this in anything. I can do this in fan view. I can do this in grid view. But for my applications, I kind of like having them by name. And the one other thing is, because we're showing it as a stack and not a folder, which is what this is called, the icon shows me the first item in that list. So if I go here and I say, actually, I want to be displayed as a folder, now it's displayed as a folder. And it's got a nice little icon there. I click on it, same behavior. What if I wanted quick access to my documents folder? Well, once again, let's go back to our home folder here. And now I'm going to drag my documents folder into the dock. Yeah. And now if I click on this, it's probably about 15 folders in there. So it's displayed it as a grid. Remember, if I go back, if I said we had fan, grid, and list, automatic is selected. But this time, I want to view it as a list. And I'm going to display it as a folder, just as we did before. Now, if I click on it, I've got a pop-up menu. And if I go to my Digicade folder, I can go there. I can go to, let's have a look at events. I could go to book fair. So I can investigate the hierarchy of my hard drive without actually opening up a window, without actually opening up a folder. And I could launch this just by clicking on it. The one thing that you can't do with this is you can't drag items out. So if you want to be able to copy things from a folder, from a stack on the right-hand side, it's either fan view or grid view. But if you want much more control about where you can go, this is a nice one to do. And finally, I could add my home folder. So once again, if we go back to computer, open up my hard drive, open up the user folder, I could take my home folder, drag it to the right-hand side, and this one I'm going to display as a folder as well. It's got that nice custom icon. Let's make it a list. And now I can access my applications, my desktop, my folders, my downloads, my movies, my music, anything I want to. Websites, tidy downloads. So this is a way of creating a really nice, quick, customizable area where you can set it up the way you want. Right, a couple of nuances to this. Those of you who did our spotlight search will recognize this. So let's make a new Finder window. In fact, no, let's not. Let's just do a find. Okay. So I want to find all the documents I worked on in the last 32 days, right? So I don't have to search by name. I'm going to say kind is a, well, let's say last open in the last 30 days. Last open date was in the last 30 days. And now it's showing me everything that I've opened up in the last 30 days. So I can narrow this down and I can say, well, actually, let's make it the last 7 days and show me all the images. So I want to say kind is an image. And now I've got all the images that I've worked in the last 7 days. Let's view by icons so that you can see that. And now this is a saved search. Remember that these files are probably in different folders all over my hard drive. It's just looking for documents that are modified in the last 7 days. So those of you who are in the Spotlight view will remember if I click Save, I can either add it to my sidebar, but I can also save it in a search folder. So I'm going to go up one level here to my library, which is where this is stored, and you can see the saved searches folder. Now, here's a little keyboard command. If you're in your saved dialog box and you want to open up that folder, hit Command and R, and it will open up the folder, and you can see their saved searches is highlighted. So I'm going to open that up, and I'm going to leave that at the top of the screen so we can see both of these. So now I want to save this search. I'm going to click Save, and we've got that folder over there. So let's say this is this week's images. Click Save, and you'll see this week's images pops into that folder. I can now take that and drag it into my sidebar and click on it. And there's the fan. It's on automatic. Let's view this as a grid. There's all the images that I've been working on in the last week. Right? Easy for me to access. I can click on them to open them, and there we are. Good to go. Okay, so that's one smart folder. So we can do the same. Let's say, for example, I wanted to find all, those were images. So some of those images were created by Photoshop. Some of those images were made inside Preview. I just want to get the numbers documents I worked on this week. So once again, we're going to do a find. And we say kind is numbers. There's no numbers there. So what do? I click Other. I say Numbers. Here's all my numbers doc, and I want to narrow this down as well. I'll say this was created or last modified within the last, this one will take 30 days. And once again, we can save this. Okay, let's back up a level, close that window. Searches so you can see it happening. There we go. Let's save this. I will call this recent numbers docs. Click Save. There it is. Again, we can drag this down. Now, once again, we've got our, let's just resize this quickly. We've got our stacks, and I would like to view this as a folder. And what do we get? We get that nice little tray that we get inside the sidebar for our recent applications. So once again, this week's images, recent numbers docs. Let's change that view to a grid. And there's the numbers docs that I've been working on in the last 30 days. So very customizable and gives me a quick entrance to either stuff that I've set up or stuff that it's searching for me on a constant basis. The last thing I want to show you before I open this up to questions is, of course, we can make our own custom folders with certain things in. So if I'm working in graphics applications, for example, and I've got a number of graphics apps that I want to make a folder for, we can do that too. So let's open up the applications folder. And if I go to my documents folder, you'll see inside documents, I have a folder called doc folders. And I've got some that I've created already. And inside them, I've made some aliases. So if I look at iLife, I've got GarageBand and iMovie. If I look inside iWork, I've got all the iWork suite. And I've also, the servers that I log on at work are inside there as well. So I've made aliases of all the tools that I want to have access to, and I can pop them into the doc. So let's make one. Let's say there's a bunch of Microsoft applications that I don't necessarily use a lot. Let's just say MS apps. And they don't merit being in my doc all the time, but I do want to get to them occasionally. So I'm going to open that up, and I'm going to go down to Microsoft over here, and I'm going to choose Excel. And instead of dragging the whole application, as I drag it, I hold down the Command and Option key. Do you see that little right-facing arrow that I've got there? It's now going to drop an alias into that folder. It's not moved the original, it's just moved a pointer. So let's take two more. Let's take OneNote. We'll drag that in. Also an alias. And let's take Teams. Okay, don't have to neaten that up. Let's go back up one level. So now I've got this folder here. I can drag this into my dock, and I now have a folder that gives me quick access to those, and I can add to it or remove it anytime. So if I wanted to open up Excel, Teams, OneNote, just click on them and I'm good to go. So that's, given the space of time we've got, a very, very fast run through of the dock, using the applications on the left-hand side, customizing them and using the pop-up menus. It really depends on the programmers, how much functionality they've got. For example, right-clicking on Mail or Pages will not give you compose new message. The programmers have to build that in. So I would experiment with right-clicking on all the applications that I've got, see what it looks like when it's empty, see what when it's not running, see what it looks like when it is running. And then I encourage you to minimize your windows into the applications rather than filling the space up, and then use the right-hand side of the dock to customize quick access to parts of your hard drive. And you might want to change it on a frequent basis. If you've got a project that you're working on, you've got a bunch of documents in there, make a project folder, chuck aliases of the items into there. You don't have to move them from their original location, and you're good to go. So that's my story for the dock. I'm going to open this up to questions. Does anybody have any questions that they'd like to ask?
I just want to know the last alias folder you showed us, when you move,
how you make a shortcut.
Yeah, the Microsoft Excel that you mentioned. If you move that across, what is the what do you need to press and hold to get the alias?
The command and the option key. You hold them together, and it doesn't have to be before you drag it. You can start to drag.
Yeah.
And then if you hold the command key and the option key down, you'll see that little right-facing curved arrow.
Option key. Thank you.
Mandy?
Alan, Launchpad.
Yep.
Never ever used it. Maybe we can.
Well, you're an old-time user. To be honest, Launchpad is much like the iPad's home screen. So if you're coming to the Mac for the first time and you're an iPad user, you'll click on it and you'll go, oh, I recognize this. This is where all my apps are. That's all that's there, and I can search and find for things. They're installed automatically. It works just like the iPad home screen. You can make folders of things. But most old-time Mac users, and I use the word old very reservedly there, Mandy, there's nothing there. It's a quick way of accessing the applications that you use. I personally never use it. It's nice. One thing that is nice about it is that if you're downloading something from the App Store, it's the only place where you get a progress bar where it tells you how big the file is and how long it's going to take. So there's a little tip for you.
Thanks.
This is your room as much as it is ours. Please help us to make it a worthwhile experience for everybody. And thank you for being DigiCate customers. And we want to give you the best experience that you can possibly have with your devices.